Good evening and welcome to the November 19th, 2018 regular meeting of the Mayor and City Council. First item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to invite John and Gracia to the podium to come lead us in the pledge, if everyone can please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, John. Next on our agenda is reflection, and I'd like to call for a moment of silence and remind everyone here and everybody watching that this is Thanksgiving week, and we fortunately have a tremendous amount to be grateful for in this community. So please join us in a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Next, we will move on to minutes to approve. The first for the council is minutes from the October 8th joint work session. What is the pleasure of the council?
Mayor, I move approval of the minutes from the work session of October 8th, 2018.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries 5-0. Next, we have minutes from the work session on Monday, October 22nd. What's the pleasure of the council?
I'll move approval of those minutes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and
I abstain. I was absent.
Abstain as well.
okay, Lorianne, you voted aye.
No.
You were present at this meeting.
Yeah, aye.
Okay, all right. So that carries 3-0 with 2 abstentions. Council members Sesma and Wu. Next, we're going to move on to appointments. We have a couple different sets, 3 different sets of appointments. The first is to the Board of Appeals. What is the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I move appointment by you to the Board of Appeals, a 3-year term. Emil Wang as the alternate. His term to expire on November 2021.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries unanimously. I'm gonna do all the thank yous at one time. So let's go through. Next to the Personnel Review Board, what is the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move approval of your appointment or reappointment of Ian Kessler to the Personnel Review Board for a term expiring November 2021. Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries 5-0. Next, we have appointment and reappointments to various committees. What's the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve your appointments to the Cultural Arts Advisory Committee for John Morigello, 2-year term to expire November 2020, and your reappointment to the Cultural Arts Advisory Committee of Beverly Kowalczyk, term to expire November 2020. Lori Yankowski, also to expire November 2020. Reappointment of Scott Friedman to the Economic and Business Development Committee, term to expire November 2021. And Kathy Bennett to the Senior Advisory Committee, term to expire November 2020.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries 5-0. So, is anybody here, I know we have at least one person, who was just appointed or reappointed to a committee? Please stand up and just introduce yourself very quickly.
Hi, good evening. My name is Emil Wang. I'm a resident of the city of Gaithersburg, and I volunteered for the alternate position to help serve the citizens of the city. So I look forward to working with you.
Let's give Emil a round of applause. And again, Emil's appointment was to the Board of Appeals, and we will thank the others that have been named as we see them. So thank you very much. Next, let me just go back. Public comments. Next, we have our public comments, and this is the time when Mayor and Council like to hear from anybody who'd like to speak on any topic that's not a public hearing topic. We do have a couple of different public hearing topics. One about the Comcast agreement, the franchise agreement, and the others about the road code. So if you're here to speak about those things, hold off, you're going to get your chance. But if you'd like to speak on anything else, we ask that you keep your remarks to no more than 3 minutes, state your name and address or neighborhood for the record. Do we have any speakers this evening? Please come on up.
My name is William Oshinsky. I'm a resident at 31 Booth Street, Unit 350, Gaithersburg, Maryland. Are we going to be discussing the S&T Kentlands Apartments tonight? The decision from the City Council?
Okay, let me put you on hold for just a second. You're going to get your 3 minutes. I paused your time. If anybody here is also here to speak about that, just know that the record on this matter is closed, and so you're welcome to testify on this or anything else that you like, but we're not legally allowed to consider information that comes to us after the record's closed. So please, go ahead.
My concern is, has the council or the planning commission decided about granting permission for the apartments to be built? Has the council approved the ingress and egress onto Great Seneca Highway? So that we don't have the residents, the 500 and some odd cars coming through the Colonnade at Kentlands property on Arts Place. That would cause a big backup. So I'm concerned about if the building permit has been approved.
We actually, that's on our agenda for later this evening.
Okay, thank you.
So, thank you. Do we have any other speakers this evening? Come on up.
I do have a comment on the same topic. My name is John Gracia. I'm at 705 Kent Oaks Way in Kentlands, and I'm here to comment on the S&C Kentlands Apartments property. My comment is on behalf of the Kentlands Downtown Working Group, which is a body of the Kentlands Citizens Assembly. Our comment is that we are generally in favor of the development and project. We welcome the increased density that it draws to the community, the variety and the vibrancy that it will bring. So we're in favor of all those things. What we would like considered more is the context of the specific architecture and the scale of the building and of the property, specifically with respect to its adjacency to the colonnade on that side of it, that's the south side, and also that the architecture, we've seen some of the proposals, and we think that the architecture as proposed doesn't necessarily agree or fit into the context of the Kentlands as much or as close as we would like it to. So that's what we would like to see improved upon, but the project overall we are in favor of.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Any other speakers this evening? Going once, going twice. Okay. Thank all our speakers. We're going to move on to our first public hearing, which is on the Comcast franchise agreement. Let me just... Who's leading it? Is this you, Tony?
Yeah.
Okay, go
It
ahead,
is.
please, take it away.
Thanks, Mayor. This public hearing relates to Comcast request to renew their franchise, which happens from time to time. I understand that there isn't any formal presentation tonight. We do have Josh Bokey from Comcast here to respond to any comments from the public or any questions from the council or the public. With that, we'd just like to see if anyone has anything to say.
Okay, first let me just ask if the council has any questions or comments before we go to the public here.
No, Tony, can you describe any significant changes in this franchise agreement as opposed to the previous ones for the public, for the benefit of the public? And if there aren't any, just say that.
There really aren't any significant changes. There are some administrative changes. There's some changes to billing deadlines and things like that. The city does not have purview over prices of the service, for example, or content that is provided. It's mostly about construction standards and customer service standards, which remain fairly similar to most other franchises around the country.
Okay. All right, well, this is the time when the mayor and council would like to hear from anybody in the public who'd like to speak on the record about the Comcast franchise agreement before us. Do we have any speakers this evening on this topic? Going once, going twice. Okay. Let me see. Tony, do we have a? Oh, here we go. I was just missing that cover sheet.
So the record remains open.
The record remains open. It doesn't have a closing date recommendation there. Or I'm not seeing it.
Till
No, November
29th of November.
Why am I not seeing it?
Because you're not looking at the cover sheet.
5 p.m. on the 29th, and then
Oh, there we go.
anticipate policy discussion on December 17th.
Okay. Do we have a motion from the council?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries 5-0. Thank you very much. Next, we are going to, I forgot to turn that off. We're going to move on to our consolidated public hearings on the road code. And I see we have Rob Robinson from our planning department, and we have Mike Johnson from our public works department.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. So this is the consolidated public hearing for ordinance amendments to chapters 19 and 20, streets and sidewalks and subdivision. Further, given the purpose of the amendment, staff will also be introducing the proposed road code regulations, which is the first item under the next subsection. The consolidated public hearing has been duly advertised on the city's website on October 25th. Hearing notifications were also sent to members of the engineering and development communities, and a city project page related to the ordinances and regulations have been available on the city's website. At the present time, there are 6 exhibits in each of the record files. These are duplicative of one another. These exhibits are referenced in the index of memoranda. The individual exhibits may be reviewed anytime online on the city's website or during regular business hours at City Hall. Any objection to the receipt of any exhibit should be noted prior to the closing of the records. Otherwise, they will be deemed received into evidence. So with that, we'll begin our presentation. So just as a rehash how we got here, the FY18 annual strategic plan, there was an action item to amend and adopt the city road code. Going back, this has been going on for over a year now. The first step was to develop new road typologies that allow design flexibility based upon the context of adjoining land use and offer a menu of design options. Again, one of the goals of these new typologies was to incorporate philosophies about Vision Zero and complete streets. We had contracted with Tool Design Group. We had worked on a number of things. We had gone through the Transportation Committee. And then we had a joint work session with the Council and the Planning Commission on the new typologies March 26, 2018, wherein at that point we received support for the typologies and to proceed with actually doing these amendments. Just as a follow-up, after that, on, I believe it was in July, we had our developer luncheon where we invited members of the engineering and development community to come in and review all the materials, as we said, and take in their input. So this evening, what you will see with the regulations incorporate comments from the council, specifically, incorporating greater flexibility with some of the bike infrastructure, and comments received from the engineering and development community. So Following up, the goal of the proposed amendments is to move the updated road code classifications and minimum requirements to a separate regulation, establish that these standards would apply both to public and privately owned roads, and remove any of the references, as we had discussed during the work session, that the roads that city-owned and maintained roads have to conform to the Montgomery County Road Code. Further, we wanted to codify the waiver process and establish necessary findings for approval. And then changes to 19 warrant amending changes to Chapter 20 to correct cross-references and terminology to align with one another. And lastly, anytime we do an ordinance change or a text amendment, we like to take care of some minor housekeeping items in both chapters. All of these actions, the two proposed amendments and the regulations, we'd just like to reaffirm some certain things that we had discussed going all the way back to the work session. These changes will not avoid existing plan approvals or road designs. They will not require the retrofit of existing roads. They will establish elements to be pursued to the greatest extent possible when retrofitting roads, however. And these changes will provide that roads may exhibit different typologies over their entire length as adjoining context change. That means a road, that goes from a single-family neighborhood but then goes through a commercial area can actually change its typology. So beginning with Chapter 19, a detailed description of all the changes has been included in a memo in the council packet as Exhibit 2. But these highlight some of the main substantive changes. So the first one, Section 1914, removes the current road code minimum design requirements and actually relocates something that's currently in 1916. 1915 removes the waiver description, removes the reference requiring us to abide by Montgomery County Road Code, and instead adds some standard details relating to sidewalks, pavings, and shared use and bike paths. 1916 is the section now that establishes that both public and private roads must conform to the new requirements. And 1917 establishes the waiver process and the findings necessary for approval. So as it relates to waivers, our current road, Chapter 19, has broad language that waivers may be granted by resolution from the council. But as we've seen, there's no real guidance on that. So oftentimes they could seem arbitrary, and staff and in discussions with the city attorney's office, we had some concerns that could be construed as somewhat arbitrary. It's difficult to deny a road code when there's nothing to judge it against. So what we are proposing here is that there are existing physical limitations that preclude the full accommodation of the standards, and/or a city-approved traffic impact analysis supports the waiver from the standards, and/or, and basically what that means is when we get a traffic study, if they can demonstrate quantitatively and engineering-wise that certain facilities may not be needed or accommodated through adjoining facilities, we could support that. We did carry over some language from the existing. It can be demonstrated that the waiver is necessary to meet the requirements or intent of Chapter 8, which is stormwater management, or Chapter 22, which is forest con. After that, these are all ands, so these three tests must be met. The granting of such waiver will not result in decreased multimodal functionality. The granting of such waivers will not adversely affect safety or operations. And the granting of such waivers for public roads will not adversely affect future maintenance and its associated costs. So this, from our standpoint, it allows flexibility. I mean, the design of the typologies is such that there is flexibility, but we understand there can always be conditions, so we didn't want to remove those. Chapter 20, again, a detailed list has been included in the memo in the council packet, and it's Exhibit 2. Mainly these are housekeeping, as I mentioned, and reflect cross-references. So this shows, things such as Article 23A have been replaced with the local government article, and it's just doing corrections like that, and wherever a change in 19 happened, it carried over into 20. So with the regulations, these were divided into sections. These have been viewed time and again, sort of at the work session. A full detail of these has been included in a memo that was also in the council packet. So going through each of the sections, the first one is purpose and applicability. This cross-references with the amended Chapter 19. There's a new street design standard chart. This lays out everything and the typologies. So this screen, while I'm not expecting anybody to be able to read it, sort of lays out what can be expected when one looks in the actual regulations. So the street design chart, we wanted to make it very user-friendly and very clear and concise about what is meant there. And then with the typologies, the structure is the same. Begins with a narrative describing its use, a highlight of its main elements, and then a graphic cross-section with dimensions. The regulations also cross-reference with 19 on the waiver process, but the regulations lay out when the waivers would be required. So for new road construction, when a design, is below the minimum design standards or higher than the design speeds, and when retrofitting privately owned and maintained roads, excuse me, they must, to the greatest extent possible. I would like to note that city projects are exempted from road codes because as CIPs, they go through a review process by the council. So it would just be doing redundancy to then require yet another application on top of that. Continuing on, introduction of slow-speed roadway design. Intersection and driveway design, this was something that was brought up by the Transportation Committee, the Council, and the Planning Commission. So this talks about, in the broad sense, the various elements and lays out a collection of guidance documents to be used. And then slow-speed roadway design treatments. Finishing up, it's additional design treatments. These are like floating bus stops and rear-end angled parking, so these are engineering designs, and bicycle facility design treatments. So staff is recommending each of these by separate motion, that the records for 19 and 20 be held open until 5 p.m. Thursday, December 20th, with anticipated policy discussion January 7th, and that comments on the draft regulations be accepted until 5 p.m. Thursday, December 20th, with final action January 7th also. And with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Thanks for putting this all together. I think it seems to be a step in the right direction. I look forward to hearing from the public and from my colleagues. Any comments or questions before we go to the public?
So Rob, I just had a question about retrofitting, I guess, since we don't go back and make people fix things that aren't in compliance with these new regulations. We will require some updating to bring them closer to the standards that we're about to adopt, correct? So that's what you talked about under.
Well, with the retrofitting, there are still some roads that are privately owned within the city, so by communities. So should they wish to retrofit, as we mentioned, this is not obligating anybody to change what's physically there now, but should they wish to do this, they would have to come as close as possible. Again, we recognize certain things, and as we mentioned during the joint work session, we're not removing homes just so we can meet a cross section. Right. So we understand the reality that retrofits do, to the greatest extent possible, incorporate the elements. What we envision is, should this be adopted, our next effort is planning and Department of Public Works to actually go through and actually now put in what all these streets are going forward, so people will know, well, if I live near this section of Oak Street, this is the typology it's to go by. Understanding that a half mile away it may be some other typology. So it really functions as a guidance document for the retrofits.
Just to add to the council on the for existing road sections, many of the in situ sections would be very difficult and expensive or expensive to upgrade. In redoing this, we beefed up the roadway sections based on the performance of roads over the history of looking at the roads over time. We've made the sections more robust so that we get more value for the money. So we wouldn't, in a retrofit, require someone to go back who has a lighter section and beef it up, as Rob is saying, because that would probably be an onerous requirement.
Right. It would be onerous for the city to do that with its own
Correct.
roads as well, so
Yes.
we have to
Right.
be careful as well. So,
Exactly.
okay. That's really the only question I had. Everything else is very clear.
Any other questions or comments?
So I didn't see anything in the packet from the Transportation Committee. Maybe I'm missing it. Is there going to be
We're waiting to go through the public hearing. Alyssa Roth is here, our liaison. So at their next meeting, they didn't have a meeting prior to the public hearing. So we're going to ask for them to weigh in once again. They did during the work session. We had put in their letter of support at that stage, but now that it's formally into a record, yes, we'd like to go before them.
Okay, great. Something I'd like to see.
All right, this is time. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't.
Sorry, it's okay. I didn't wave my hand in the air.
Yeah.
I have a question on the waiver section in Chapter 19 on pages 73 and 74. My understanding of what is going on here is that it's constraining the council's ability to grant waivers. Now, I haven't seen a lot of this activity going on in my term on the council, but I'm just curious what the rationale is behind the narrowing of council's authority in this particular case. Or unless I'm reading this wrong.
No, I mean, it can be viewed as that, but again, the concern was, and especially we saw it the last few years, it essentially, road code waivers have become a rubber stamp because there was nothing to judge against. So by just going, well, you have other roads that were granted waivers, therefore we deserve waivers, we basically approved those, so there were no findings. So the difficulty comes should a development project come in.
So hold on one sec. So when you say we approve them, who's we? Was that
the council? Council approves all road code waivers.
Okay.
So the concern was by not having any sort of criteria from which to judge, should a situation arise where a road's brought in that was denied when there's nothing, there's no formal codified criteria to approve or deny something, we felt it was important, especially when an overriding goal of the new road code was to already build in flexibility and not be as draconian as the 1968 code that we were working on.
Okay, and on the second slide of on Chapter 19, so I understand the first slide, the first three bullets are the 3 points the 3 criteria that need to be met. The second slide, the second list of bullets, is that an additional set of criteria, or how does it all? I'm just trying to understand how it all fits together.
So if you're looking at road code waivers, the first 3 on the slide right now are and or, so they're not required. So this is something, a proposed development could meet one or none of all of these. But the second slide are ands. These are required. We don't want any road code that reduces functionality. We don't want any road code that reduces public safety. And we don't want any road code on a public road that is being done in such a way that in the future will drive up maintenance costs. So, we don't want somebody skimping on construction that in the long run will cause us to have to spend more of the taxpayers' dollars maintaining these roads. So it's sort of split. One is, what is the context for which you come by, but these are the, the ones that you have to meet these 3.
All right, so the second and third bullet on this page, I totally get. The first one, can you give me some context of where that might apply?
So if we have a traffic study, and we know a development's coming in that's going to generate X amount of traffic, and because of, for whatever reason, they wish to develop a road that essentially can't handle that capacity, or worse, if we know, going forward that we may want to have, more transit, and they come in with a road design that can't facilitate transit and the vehicular, so the multimodal aspect, they have to maintain, again, if the overall goal that we have stated in the city is to eventually become a multimodal community, this is ensuring that waivers from that maintain that we're not sacrificing in a new road, the multimodal functionality.
All right, that clarifies things, thank you.
Any other questions or comments before we go to the public? Not seeing any. Okay. This is the time where the mayor and council would love to hear from anybody in the public who'd like to speak on this topic. Do we have any speakers this evening? Not seeing any. I'll remind everybody, as I should have reminded everybody about the Comcast franchise agreement. If you think of stuff, you are welcome to submit your comments to us in writing, and they'll be considered just the same as any testimony would have been this evening. As long as you get it in while the record's still open. So in this case, we're going to need 2 motions, right, Lynn?
Correct.
Okay. So, but in both cases, the staff is recommending that the records be held open until 5 p.m. Thursday, December 20th, with policy discussion on January 7th. So, would someone like to make a motion on Chapter 19, and then we'll go to 20?
Mayor, I'd like to move the motion to hold the record open for the amendment to Chapter 19, Streets and Sidewalks.
Okay. Any second? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries unanimously. Next, we have the Chapter 20 amendments.
I'll move that we hold the record open on Chapter 20 amendments until 5 p.m. on Thursday, December 20th.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carries 5-0. Thank you very much. Next, we have ordinances, resolutions, and regulations, and introduction of regulations on street design standards and traffic calming. And I suppose you guys have not moved because you are leading us in that one as well.
So that was the third motion. So if we have a motion to introduce, and our recommendation again is to accept comments until 5 p.m. Thursday, December 20th, with final action on January 7th.
And I do want to remind council, since this is a regulation under Section 210, you would also, as part of your motion, need to determine whether or not it's in your discretion as to whether you want to hold a public hearing on this matter. I believe it's staff's recommendation that a public hearing is not necessary.
Okay. What's the pleasure of the council here?
Well, Mr. Mayor, since we are in the middle of a public hearing on the statutory elements of road code amendment, I think that may sort of cover the opportunity for members of the public to provide that input as part of that discussion, which obviously plugs into the discussion on regulations as well, I think. So given that, I think it does make sense to not have a public hearing for the regulations, because we do have a public hearing and an open record for a while for folks to provide input on the code that we just had our hearing presentation on. So with that, I will move introduction of the proposed regulations without the need for a public hearing on the regulations.
Just a question, if I could. So does that permit the submission of written material, or is there nothing for consideration?
There is still a record that would be held open.
Okay.
And in any case, if we ultimately pass this regulation, it would only take a simple majority of the council to change the regulation, as opposed to ordinance. So anyway,
Did
you
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Because
I'll second it.
yeah, regulations
yeah.
are changed by resolution and not by ordinance.
Right. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
So I think,
Indeed.
yeah, well, since it's been seconded, I'll just add some comments here. I think actually regulations have a more direct impact on our constituents than what we've already closed or moved to close the amendments that we've talked about as well. So, but since we are talking about it, and we have had the hearing this already, and there is an opportunity for people to contribute to the record, I think that's probably fine. So.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries 5-0. Thank you very much. Next, we have the annexation, the Beecraft annexation. And I will make a statement the same statement I made previously on this topic. I will run the meeting as usual, but I'm not going to participate in substantive discussion on this topic because in my day job, I have a contract with somebody who is a principal in this matter. And my contract has nothing to do with anything in the city of Gaithersburg, but I'm just going to stay out of the conversation anyway. So please, Laura, take it away.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the vote on the resolution for annexation application X7969-2018, authorizing the annexation into the city of Gaithersburg of approximately 1.8 acres of land adjacent to the corporate limits of the city and to establish RA zoning for said property. The area of annexation is located south of the intersection of East Deer Park Drive and Central Avenue. It includes portions of 4 undeveloped platted lots. These lots are currently split between the county and the city, so the annexation includes those portions of the lots that are in the county. So on the aerial you see here, the annexation area is this light purple shaded area, and the blue line is the city boundary. So essentially, the annexation would just be bringing in the rear yards of these lots on Easter Park and then the side yard of the lot along Central Avenue. This is the annexation plan. Again, as I mentioned, the annexation area totals about 1.8 acres, and it is within the city's maximum expansion limits. The applicant is requesting RA zoning, which would match the zone of the portions already in the city here. The property is currently zoned County R200, which is very similar to the RA zone. Both zones are low-density residential. They both allow just over 2 dwelling units per acre. The city's planning commission reviewed this annexation and plan on September 5th and recommended that the annexation complies with the city's master plan, that the proposed RA zone is appropriate, and that the proposed annexation can be served by public facilities. The Montgomery County Planning Board reviewed the annexation at their September 13th, 2018 meeting. The board approved the annexation, asserting that the proposed RA zone, again, was comparable to the existing county R200 zone and would not allow greater density. A public hearing for X 7969-2018 was held on October 15th, 2018, and the record closed on October 23rd, 2018. No public comments were received into the record. So with that, staff recommends that the mayor and city council approve the resolution authorizing the annexation and establish RA zoning for said property.
Thank you, Laura. Comments and questions from the council?
I think this is a no-brainer. It makes sense for the property owners to be working under one set of rules and zoning regulations to realize the best optimal use of their property. I wish some of the other adjacent property owners might consider coming into the city as well. But that being said, I think this one's pretty easy.
I agree.
Yeah. Seems like an anachronism from a bygone era, and I'm satisfied with the use is appropriate for the area.
Anybody? Or would someone like to make a motion, or?
Should Ryan call the vote?
Oh, because you're
I am going to run the meeting, but
because you're recused.
Yeah.
You can still call the vote. That's right.
I just had one question. Are there plans for additional density on this annex?
No, so they're platted for single-family detached homes.
So it's the exact same density that they have had
Currently.
under the
Yes,
previously
it's
existing
2.1,
split.
yes, 2.18 units per acre.
Yeah.
Our zone
That
is-
would not change.
yeah. So from R200, it goes to RA.
RA, yes. And they have the exact same density.
Well, I guess I'll move the ordinance.
Second.
It is an ordinance, correct?
It's a resolution.
It's a resolution.
I'll move
It's
the
a
resolution.
resolution. Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries 5-0. Thank you very much, Laura.
Thank you.
Next, Lynn Board. We have our Fifth Amendment to the Annexation Agreement for Washingtonia.
Yes, thank you. This is the Fifth Amendment to the annexation agreement for Washingtonian. As you will recall, the city annexed 237 acres of land into the city some time ago, back in 1991. The portion that's before you tonight is an approximately 49-acre parcel. It is where Washingtonian Rio is currently developed. The owners of that property, the Peterson's Company, is looking ahead and doing some long-range planning and visioning for their property, and they have requested that we amend the annexation agreement to accommodate those plans so that the property can stay current with the market. This was before you previously, where you gave the city manager authority to negotiate the annexation agreement. Staff has been working with the developers to do so, and tonight the resolution is to authorize the city manager to execute that agreement. The amendment does several things. It does allow up to 1,145 residential units on the property, which would be new. Currently, it's commercially used. There would be up to 1,263 square feet of non-residential uses on the property. There would be 150,000 square feet of potential self-storage, and we know that that was an issue that the mayor and council had some concern with when this first came to you, so we did add some language that that use would not detract from the pedestrian-oriented street-level experience as determined by the mayor and council at SDP. So that would come back to you for review and approval for any of the self-storage use. It does allow an automobile sales showroom, but with no exterior storage capacity for that. The range in heights would be between 4 and 10 feet, or 10 stories, sorry. It'd be a little bit
Hopefully
difficult.
more than 4 feet.
More than 4 feet, yeah.
Be a little bit difficult at that level. There is the ability to transfer density between the various parcels. They've also agreed to $200,000 in new equipment and features to the playground area and public amenities on the property, and that would be constructed within the next 2 years. And finally, the current annexation agreement says that future development would not trigger APFO requirements. We have negotiated that the APFO traffic requirements would be triggered for any residential development or any commercial development beyond 891,000 square feet was what we determined, which they currently have approvals for.
But it wouldn't trigger the schools test.
Correct. I mean, the schools test is already, it would already be there. Yeah, there's not an exemption to that, so yeah, so it would trigger the schools test for the residential.
And it would need to come back to us through SDP before they would develop the residential portion of it, at which time that's when a schools test would be looked at.
Correct.
So to be clear, there was no exemption in
There's
the
no
annexation.
exemption from the schools test.
Yeah,
yes.
thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, there was an exemption for traffic.
Up to a certain
Up
amount
to a
of
certain
square
amount,
feet.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, and there are representatives from Peterson as well as their council here this evening if you have any questions.
So the residential development, 1,600 units, would be subject to our affordable housing ordinance, or not?
No, it would be, yes.
It would be.
I think it's 1,145 units.
Yeah, or
not
11,
16.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I didn't want to expand it, I'm sorry. 1,145 is
record
fine,
clear.
but I want to make sure that there will be affordable units coming
Correct.
with this residential development. Thank you.
I just want to thank staff and the applicant for coming up with the language on the self-storage, which I think raised some red flags among people here. But I like the way it's turned out. So.
Well, can I go
Yeah, go
back to
ahead,
the issue
please.
of self-storage? So
Please.
can the applicant tell us where that, I'm sorry, not applicant, the developers give us an idea of where that self-storage might be and how might it be disguised so that nobody knows it's there, other than the people that use it? Won't be floating on the lake, right?
Submerged, submarines.
Submarines.
Hi, good evening. My name is Paul Weinschenk. I'm with the Peterson Companies, and thank you to the staff for working with us on this application. It's a pleasure to be here tonight, and I'm happy to answer your question. The self-storage is really something that anticipates the future, a day that may not ever come, but we think quite possibly could, when some of the larger retailers in the project decide that they no longer wish to be a part of the project, or if they wish to be a part of the project, no longer want to do it at the sort of scale and size that they currently occupy. I think you know that we've got 3 buildings there that all have two-story heights to them. Two-story retailers are very much the anomaly in this day and age. And so we can envision a possibility where one of those could be repurposed and added on to accommodate the self-storage use without being done in a way that would diminish the overall retail character of the project, because that continues for us to be the primary purpose of Rio Washingtonian. The self-storage is a way of meeting a demand in the market and repurposing potentially an existing building. Another location where that might happen is in the location of the current Barnes & Noble, which today, in this day and age, Barnes & Noble no longer occupies space of that size. Some retailers do, but we don't know when the day comes that Barnes & Noble is no longer there, what sort of retail will be there. And that building is deep enough, and the topography behind the building is such that we could envision a situation where a building, or that building, could be added onto, which would then allow some vertical height at the rear and accommodate a self-storage, while at the same time the front of that building could continue to serve in a retail purpose. So those are a variety of possibilities. As with much of what's in our application or our request for this amendment, we can't say with great specificity exactly how things will come about. But what we do know is that we want to be ready for the future, because retail continues to evolve. The demands of our retailers are changing, and the day will come where what was a very sensible project 20 years ago is out of date. And so we wanted simply the ability to come back in for the SDP, whether it's on self-storage or whether it's a new office building or a new hotel or some residential, and meet with the mayor and council again and present a specific application at that point, which will be very detailed in nature and allow a much more sort of robust conversation about what the project actually looks like. So, long answer, but thank you.
Thank you. Gives
Good
us
answer.
a better idea.
Yeah.
So I had a question. What is the current footage for the Barnes and Noble?
If I remember correctly, it's about 27,000 feet.
Bless you. And so the self-storage unit would be 150,000 square feet?
Yeah, up to.
Not-
It could
up
be
to.
smaller,
Okay.
but some facilities do get built that large.
Because I was thinking about the size,
Mhm.
and I was looking for things to compare it to. The White House is 54,895 square feet. So I'm thinking about 3 White Houses in the space where the Barnes and Noble is, and I'm just.
Yeah, for a portion of it, perhaps. So our intention would be that the street really wants to be retail, and that's frankly what drives sort of healthy retail, and we're going to have retail facing retail. So we would not want to have a dead sort of self-storage facility facing retail. What we envision is that the back half of that
Yeah,
existing
I
building
remember the
could be
conversation.
repurposed and added onto in the rear, and that's how we could get to the square footage.
So I'm just wondering if it needs to be as high as 150,000 or a more, I guess.
Well, we've proposed
Realistic.
150,000 because we think that that's representative of what is sometimes accomplished or built in the self-storage market in that industry. But clearly, the time will come when, if it does, that we'll be back here before council with an SDP, and I'm sure that there will have been numerous conversations with staff ahead of that that will deal with that square footage issue, and it may be that we can come forward with an application at that time that is compelling and effective in allaying concerns about the size and having that size not diminish the overall quality of the Rio. Or it may be that at that time it just makes clear sense that it needs to be a smaller project, whether because that's what's going on in the market or that's the outcome of the conversations with staff. I would respectfully ask that we leave the language as it is and allow us the opportunity to present something more detailed in the future if and when that day comes.
Okay. All right.
Does that, first of all, let me say thank you for a very good proposal overall, and we have always appreciated working with the owners of the Washingtonian Rio, which has really experienced quite a bit of a renaissance in recent years. We appreciate the investment that's been put into it. And this is an exciting time to think about, sort of the midterm and long-term future of this project, which, I mean, I don't want to lay it on too thick here, but I mean, this is really one of the major draws of Gaithersburg, I think. Let me ask you another question about the self-storage. Does the proposal accommodate the possibility that there might be more than one location within the project where there would be self-storage?
It does not. Actually, the amendment is quite specific and does 2 things. First, well, really 3, I guess. One is that it has the cap of the 150,000 square feet that we've been discussing. Second thing it does is it indicates very clearly that there can only be one such facility in the entirety of the Rio Washingtonian complex. And then the third thing it does is it limits it to the area that is, if you will, to the north of the lake. So Uncle Julio's, through Coles, that area. Nowhere else within the Rio Washingtonian complex can there be a self-storage facility.
Thank you.
I have some other questions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go right ahead.
I interrupted you.
Oh, okay. So I see that there's a increased demand for or it's projected that there's going to be, how many hotel rooms? A couple hundred hotel rooms, 445. And we already have, how many hotel rooms are currently there between the two Marriotts?
There are several hundred that are there currently. But our approach to this is that we don't want here in this day to be closing the door to possibilities down the road. The application that we have before you is not something that we will be able to move on immediately. We're really sort of anticipating a longer term situation with the evolution of particularly our three largest retail anchors and what will potentially happen with those buildings in the future, and then Barnes & Noble to a degree. So we don't have the answers today as to exactly which uses would make sense to implement, but rather we're essentially kind of trying to put some arrows in the quiver. And in the future, as these buildings potentially come back to us, then at that point, what we'll be doing is looking at sort of supply and demand for the different kinds of uses that we could have here, and trying to make some good choices about which are the ones to move forward with, and develop plans for work with staff, work with council, and ultimately have an SDP approved on one or more of those locations.
Would a 300-room hotel be able to accommodate conference space?
Conceivably. I think one of the great things that we have is we've got, whether you're looking at, well, frankly, any of the three largest anchors that we have, they each occupy fairly substantial footprints, and I think that creates some real opportunity for flexibility in terms of how those are laid out and the kinds of uses that go into it.
Okay. And then I see that there's a proposal for elderly housing.
Again,
or as an option.
Yeah, really as an option where we're really trying to think kind of broadly and in a sort of open way about what would make sense here in the long term. What we're seeing is generally speaking, a population that continues to age, and families that are trying to figure out how to help mom or dad or both sort of scale down from their current housing choices, have somebody or have the opportunity for those elderly relatives to be able to live close to family members, potentially to be in an environment that has some activation about it that's pleasant and enjoyable. So we can conceive in our minds of that possibility. But again, in the future, when the day comes to think through what makes sense, that market may tell us that there's not interest, or it may tell us that in fact there is.
Okay, because we just approved a project in the by Anytime Fitness, Lifetime Fitness.
Yeah.
So just wanted to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
What else is here? Okay. Any ideas about the investments near the carousel yet?
I'm sorry?
Any ideas about the types of investment near the carousel, the playground area?
Yeah, we've been working with a playground designer, and what we're looking at doing is something that will be larger and essentially replace in totality the equipment that's out there. I think one of the neat features that's very likely going to be embedded in this is it's going to be significantly accessible to folks with disabilities. So just because somebody might be have sort of more limited mobility, we're trying to make it possible for everybody to get out there.
That's it.
And I've mentioned this to you, sorry, I just wanted to piggyback on the playground thing real quick. If that's all right. I've mentioned this to you in the past, but I have a very large non-voting constituency that was very sad to see the hedge tunnel that was there for many years ago, a couple of years ago. So throw that in the back of your mind if you guys are thinking about how to run the playground area.
Laser focus. Deals.
That's all right. So I just have one quick question, since most of the ground has already been covered, about the potential residential units, and again, I know this is all, you're just framing up what your possibilities might be for the future. If there were multifamily units, are you talking about owner-occupied or rental units, or
Yeah,
is that clear yet?
Yeah, we're imagining that one or both. It could go either way. I mean, there could be demand for rental property, or it could be something for somebody who has been a long-term resident here in Gaithersburg or surrounding Gaithersburg and would really like to sort of move out of the single-family home, not worry about mowing the lawn and raking the leaves and all of that good stuff, and might want to do this as an ownership kind of opportunity. So I think when the time comes, we'll be looking at both and trying to figure out what the market wants.
Okay, so you're not, I was just clarifying whether you're locked into one
We're not.
way of working or not.
We're not
but-
locked into one.
All right, great,
Yeah.
thank you.
I had a couple of questions, which I think might be for Lynn and not for you. But you're welcome to
I will
chime in if you have some
I-
thoughts on them. But the first question, Lynn, is just to reemphasize what I think has already been said a couple times here, but for the benefit of the public, is that the terms that are being considered here in this annexation amendment are essentially caps, and that for any individual project, be it residential or retail or anything else, that the owner ultimately decides they want to do underneath the parameters of this, they'd still have to come to us for a public hearing and an SDP approval, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So we get another opportunity to really vet the details of any one of these projects.
Or some council would.
Or some council. When I say we, I mean the future council, right? And then the second question I wanted to ask you, Lynn, is whether or not there's any sort of shot clock associated with any of these conditions in the annexation agreement, or, you know, if approved, it essentially creates these parameters without a deadline for the owner to act on any of them.
Really, the only deadline that we did put in this was for the playground improvements, where they agreed to construct those within the next 2 years. Everything else continues permanently. Yeah.
Unless amended again
Unless
at some
amended
future
again.
time. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Mike?
One other question. So one of the possibilities is integrated light manufacturing. I'm always intrigued by
Yeah.
integrated light manufacturing.
Sure.
So that's a lot of different things. Perhaps you could.
Well, so, you know, I think an example that really stands out for us is the idea that a distillery might be a part of this. And so, you know, we're seeing that the restaurant and food and beverage industry continues to evolve and change, and people, whether it's on, you know, sort of craft beers or craft whiskey, whatever it might be, that kind of experience is something that a lot of people enjoy being a part of. And for them, that might mean, hey, I love going and having dinner and being able to try a couple of different beverages. And that's great. And I think we're anticipating the possibility that the venue that's offering that is going to, as part of their whole operation and part of what makes them unique and interesting and compelling to people to come out and spend time with, are going to want to actually have the distillery right on site, as opposed to saying, well, we're in a warehouse, which is not interesting, that's not cool, it doesn't make for a fun story. But to have it here, you can see it, you're having dinner, you're trying the beverage, that could be interesting, and so we want to create that opportunity.
But correct me if I'm wrong, Lynn, that's not atypical of this area. It was an amendment a few years back that included such uses in
the
MXD
zone.
zone.
The zone,
in
yeah,
general.
MXD zone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
We
Yes.
wrote standards for
They
that.
wrote that.
Yes.
Correct.
Mhm.
Okay.
Anybody have any other questions before we call for a motion?
I just wanted to comment that I'm very impressed with the investment that you put into the area and the investment that you've committed to going forward. I was jogging around the Rio the other day, and I saw the new yard house.
Yeah.
It is looking very impressive. So I think you're going in the right trajectory. I want to keep helping this area of Gaithersburg, all areas of Gaithersburg. This is one of, as Ryan said, this is one of our crown jewels.
Yeah.
And I'm satisfied in reading the annexation agreement amendment that it helps go in that direction with the appropriate safeguards that we've discussed.
Thank you.
I'll second that, just say you guys have been a a terrific partner, and it really is it's good to see the success over there, and we hope to replicate it in other places in the city. So, do we have a motion?
I'll move approval.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carries 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, let me see what we are. Next, we are from the mayor and city council. We are going to start with council member Sesma.
All right, it's been, I've missed a couple of meetings recently, having been both on travel for the day job at NIH, but also to attend National League of Cities convention in Los Angeles. So I wasn't here on election day, so I wanted to, and that the following week, so I wanted to congratulate all those who were elected on November 6th. I think I can speak for the council in saying we're all looking forward to working with the new electeds, especially our new county executive, Mark Elrich, our new and continuing members of the county council, the delegations from District 17, District 39, and District 15, all who have new members that will be serving. So looking forward to them, working with all of them in advancing what's good for Gaithersburg and good for and I think what's good for Gaithersburg is good for the region and good for Montgomery County as well. So several of us, since it's been over 12 years since we've had a new county executive, I think Mark Elbridge has a lot of challenges that he's dealing with, and I think he started off on a really good foot in naming a large, asking a number of members of the community, both elected officials, people from nonprofits, people from the development community, property owners, and citizens who are active in various functions. He's asked them to serve on what he calls the Elrich Transition Team. So about 180 people were invited. I think most of those have responded. A number of us up here, Neil, Lorianne, Ryan, Judd, myself, are all serving on various, I think there's 7 transition committees looking at different issues. So we had our second meeting today. There's also been listening sessions that the county executive, the incoming county executive, has held. The first one was in Germantown on Saturday. Apparently it was standing room only. So that was, I think, we're looking forward to how things are, what's going to happen next. So last week I attended the National League of Cities City Summit in Los Angeles. It was a great conference, along with Ryan and Lorianne, a number of members of the Maryland Municipal League. At that meeting, annually, every year, new leadership for the league is elected. One of our own, College Park Mayor Patrick Wyan, was a candidate for the second vice president of the league. He didn't make it, but I think he gave it a good try, and we look for him to try again. The new leadership of the National League of Cities is Karen Freeman Wilson, the mayor of Gary, Indiana. Joe Buscaino is the first vice president. He will step up the presidency next year. He's a council member from Los Angeles, and he was the host for the conference. And Kathy Maness, a council member from Lexington, South Carolina. So they happen to be friends of mine. I'm very happy for all of them. I know they'll do good work, and I'm looking forward to their leadership. The other thing that happens is that new directors for the board of directors are elected at this meeting, and the chairs of the advocacy committee. So I want to congratulate our own Lorianne Sales on being appointed the chair of the Community Economic Development Public Advocacy Committee.
That deserves a round of applause.
That means in the year that she is chair, she will also serve on the board of directors. So you have big shoes to fill, because Henry actually was chair of that committee and a longtime member of that committee. So, and I'm sure the members of that committee will remind you of that too. So. But it's good to have Gaithersburg represented not only as a chair of an advocacy committee, but also as a member of the board of directors. So good luck with all that. And then I want to congratulate Park Recreation and Culture team, the Winter Lights team, all of our sponsors and the volunteers for Winter Lights. It starts this weekend. But the first event was actually kind of mudded out, because the supposed to be s'mores under the lights, but the lot where they would park cars was all muddy, so they canceled that event. The next night was the Run Under the Lights, the 8th annual Run Under the Lights, which actually it's a 5K through the course where the winter lights are. I ran again. I think it was my 6th run. I did finish on my feet and at a running pace. There were over 900 runners, or almost 900 runners, and this is an event that we collaborate with the Montgomery County Roadrunners. Registration for that event closes within a couple of hours of it opening, so it's a it's a prime ticket. Last night was wine under the lights. This isn't where people come to complain. It's where they come and taste local wines and have some food from a couple local restaurants, food trucks, etc. And apparently they had a lot of s'mores left over because they built some fire pits and they had s'mores that night as well. So that was about 400 people. And tomorrow night, if you have a pet, tomorrow night is leashes under the lights. So you can walk with the mayor and his stepdog, yeah.
My granddog.
Your granddog, yes, that's right. And you can walk that same 5K trail route through the entire event. So again, we couldn't do this without our sponsors. We couldn't do it without a terrific staff. And every year there's a new surprise on that route. So and then finally, this is a time of season when we have to. I think we all want to do something to help those that are less fortunate than us, than many of us, those in need in our community. So we have a holiday giving program, and Saturday was the distribution for Thanksgiving. I think we distributed the fixing for Thanksgiving meals for about 400 families, and it's great. It's a nice event. The whole family comes in many cases. So I want to thank our sponsors and volunteers for that, and our great staff. I was there to help, carry boxes and lift stuff, and Judd was there for a while, the mayor was there for a while. Anyway, again, I want to thank everybody, and with that, I'll wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy your family. Just don't argue, just don't talk politics at the table in case there's issues. So anyway, happy Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Rob.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I see you gave me something to read,
Yes.
so I'll read it. After closed executive session, closed meeting was held at City Hall by the Mayor and City Council on Tuesday, November 13, 2018 at approximately 8:46 p.m. pursuant to a motion adopted unanimously. The meeting was proposed to be closed pursuant to the General Provisions Article of Annotated Code of Maryland, Section 3-305B7 to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice, and 3-305B8 to consult with staff, consultants, or other individuals about pending or potential litigation. The topics discussed were the transportation tax memorandum with Montgomery County and appeals of FCC rulemaking and a claim. Present at the meeting were Mayor Ashman, council members Harris, Sales, Sesma, Spiegel, and Wu. City staff present were City Manager Tomasello, City Attorney Board, Deputy City Manager Enslinger, Assistant City Attorney Johnson, and Police Chief Schroka. Upon conclusion of the discussion, the closed meeting was adjourned at approximately 9:57 p.m. I think that's the most I've said in a long time, so I'm going to just leave it right there, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Rob. Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening again, everyone. I'll echo the comments that Mike already made about being involved in the transition team groups, policy discussions for the administration of incoming county executive Elrich. Mike and I participated in a discussion today that involved thinking about ways to improve policies for childcare and also to address food insecurity issues in the county. At this time around Thanksgiving especially, we all are fortunate, those of us who can enjoy a nice big meal with family and friends, but there is a significant amount of food insecurity in our county. We look at data like free and reduced meals in our schools, and other social programs that deliver food and other resources to our residents, and we need to be reminded of the importance of working on these kinds of programs to help those in need. In that spirit, actually, today, I was fortunate to be able to join a program called the Brothers Program, which is a sort of an after-school club run by Morris Hudson, a good friend of many of ours, and a very dynamic fellow who inspires a lot of young kids. This program mentors mainly minority young men at Gaithersburg High School, many of whom also are lower income, And they do an annual program where members of the community come and serve a Thanksgiving dinner to the kids. And so it was really my pleasure and my honor to be able to participate in that today. And coming out of the policy discussion about food insecurity, I remarked that the best public service is really where policy meets practice, and where you really get to sort of see firsthand the impacts of the choices of our society, both good and bad choices. And while we all up here are all very fortunate to have been chosen by the public to have the opportunity to cast votes on laws that will help a lot of people we may never meet, and that's a very good feeling. It's also a really special feeling to connect with kids right in front of you and seeing how much they appreciate that you're there in the room and that you see them and that you acknowledge them as part of our community. That's a great feeling too. And so I think it's an important reminder of the human factor that's often lost in our public policy debates. And I'm glad that we as a city and as individuals have the opportunity to do a lot of that kind of service, and I hope we'll continue to do it. Mike also mentioned a lot about the National League of Cities Conference that I also attended in Los Angeles. It was a productive time. I'm glad I was able to attend, go to a number of sessions, do a lot of networking. We always joke around with our colleagues from other cities around the country that the best compliment we can give each other is to steal good ideas from each other. So we'll try to steal a couple of good ideas we learned about that other cities are doing and try to implement our versions of those here in the coming months and years. In fact, years ago, the idea for the Bank on Gaithersburg program, which evolved into our robust financial education, financial independence program that the city runs, I actually stole that from a couple of cities that presented on it about 10 years ago at another NLC conference. So it was a good experience. Unfortunately, while we were there with thousands of other mayors and city council members from around the country, there were a number of tragedies that happened right in the LA area. There was the shooting in Thousand Oaks. There, of course, were the wildfires spreading around the outskirts of Los Angeles. And it was, sort of just another reminder that as municipal governments, where the rubber meets the road, it's really, the responsibility falls on us to do our part to work on, these big issues that affect our communities, from gun violence to climate change to many others. And by working together with other cities and towns and local governments around the country and around the world, hopefully we'll continue to try to make a difference on those important issues. Last week I also presented the testimony of the city as to its legislative priorities for the state government for the coming legislative session in Annapolis. There was a hearing in Rockville where we were able to provide a summary of our focus and our priorities to all of the state legislators representing Montgomery County, all of the senators and delegates. And so I was able to talk to them about our priorities, and they seem pretty attentive, so we'll continue to work with them. We've got a great relationship with our representatives in Annapolis, and obviously the next session will be starting in January, so we're gearing up for that. Just a reminder, November is Opioid Awareness Month. The city was lit up in purple pretty much all month, I think, in the evenings.
Still is.
And was, for those of you who are here in the audience, you may have seen that tonight as you came up the driveway, that there was sort of a purple hue to the front facade of City Hall. And I'm wearing the purple pin. And so while we did issue a proclamation a couple of weeks ago, I just wanted to remind everybody this is something that we are trying to promote awareness of for the entire month of November. And with that, I'll wish everybody a very happy and safe Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Neil.
Okay, well, thank you. Since we're having a long meeting, I'm not going to reiterate some of the things that I did that my colleagues did. The transition process so far appears to be being very productive, and I'm working on the Easier Commutes team, which is shouldn't be a surprise to you who have listened to me talk up here about trying to ameliorate traffic in the area. I think we're coming up with some good ideas, and we'll see how far we can take it. So a few quick things that I had a chance to participate in. One was the ribbon cutting for the new Woodhouse Day Spa over in Crown Farm. Very impressive, high-end luxury facility had many features that I have no idea what they do or how it works, including a room where you lie on a table and there are 8 shower nozzles directly over you. I have really, I don't know, I'm pretty sure it's not waterboarding, but that was the only idea I could come had a chance to attend the Identity's 20th anniversary event called The Promise of Latino Youth the other day, which was very informative. Sadly, one of the findings of the research that was performed for the event was that the dropout rate among Latino youth, while is decreasing nationwide, is increasing here in Montgomery County. And that's obviously something that needs to be addressed, because without a high school education, it's harder and harder to make a living. And the Leadership Montgomery event for this month was Public Safety Day, which was very eye-opening. The morning we spent at the county jail up in Boyd's near the Clarksburg outlets. Had a chance to interact with some of the staff, but also to sit and chat with some of the inmates there, who were, by and large, much younger than I was expecting. One of the things I didn't know ahead of time was that the difference between a jail and a prison means that in jail they're there for up to 18 months, and in a prison it's a longer term, which means that everybody that's there is going to be out on the street soon. And so the really great thing to see was how much the focus was on rehabilitation and education, and making sure that these young men have more structure in their lives and some skills that they can bring out, and programs so that when they come out, that they don't fall into the same bad influences and the same situations that they were in before that led them down that unfortunate path. So that was great to see how enlightened our local jail is. It was very impressive. The afternoon we spent at the Public Safety Training Academy over on Snoffer School Road, and had a chance to get a better understanding of what the police face, even something as simple as a routine traffic stop, which they just don't know who they're stopping and what they might be facing and how quickly they have to react. So there was some role playing and education that was above and beyond, again, my expectations and experience. And we also worked with the local fire department. I had a chance to see what working a fire hose is really like. It's kind of fun, but I'm sure in real life the fun part is not really that part of it. But anyway. Had a chance to listen to and ask questions of both the county's chief of police and the fire chief. And I'll tell you, very impressive individuals. We're very lucky to have them in this county. The level of expertise and guidance and training and management that is available to the fire rescue people and the police department in this county is really as good as it gets in the country. One last note is, wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. I've already had 2 Thanksgiving meals, so I'm going to try to eat light this time. We had an early meal for the extended family that now scatters to the winds on Thanksgiving Day, and the Transportation Planning Board treated us to a Thanksgiving feast for lunch the other day. Makes it a little hard to make it all the way through the meeting, so I'm glad we didn't do that tonight. Anyway, have a happy Turkey Day, enjoy your family, and that's it for tonight.
Thanks, Neil. Lorianne.
Thank you, sir. I too missed quite a few meetings with travel, but I want to say thank you, since we're in the spirit of thanks. I want to say thank you to all of our new and returning residents that are volunteering to serve on a board, committee, or commission. We're a better city because of your participation. I had the pleasure of attending a discussion hosted by the Kentlands Community Foundation in the city of Gaithersburg regarding the challenges and opportunities for the aging population in the city, and looking at ways to better accommodate our seniors who want to age in place, and any activities, strengthening our villages. I know that we gave grants to enhance the Villages program that was started in the Kentlands, and it's taken on a really big wave across the county, and so I'm excited to see the benefits that it will have in the community. We also, I'm sure this was covered, but we held the last council in the community's meeting at Lakelands Park, and that was very well attended. I'm probably going to cover some of the items that were discussed there, like the apartment. So I'm looking forward to that discussion later on. I was invited to attend an Indian musical concert from our previous junior mayor. It was very interesting. If you living in a diverse city, you get to experience a lot of different cultures, and so when you have the chance, take it. It was very nice to celebrate with them. As Mike and my colleague Ryan mentioned, we attended the National League of Cities conference. We had sessions on a wide range of topics, from affordable housing, especially ways to expand access, increase supply and density. I attended a session on using data to accelerate community progress and influence policy and decision making. If you haven't had a chance, the county recently released a study that is actually forecasting life expectancy all the way down to our zip code. It recently came out, and it's something that I'm hoping that we can use across the county to better guide decision making. I also attended a dinner that was hosted by the Wellbeing Trust. It's a national foundation dedicated to advancing the mental, social, and spiritual health of the nation. They are trying to promote a better understanding of how city leaders can effectively serve residents on a broad range of health needs. We already offer a wide range of recreational programs, and so it was a good way to see what else can be done at the local level to enhance health and wellness. As Mike mentioned, I was appointed to the Community Economic Development Committee, and at the first meeting, I was told that our former colleague, Henry Marafa, served the committee very well, and so I do have big shoes to fill, but I'm excited to show off all the good things that Gaithersburg has to offer. Part of being the chair is being able to host the annual meeting here in the city of Gaithersburg and show off all the great things about our city. So that'll happen in August, and I'm sure we'll be providing updates shortly. I just want to echo Ryan's call to pray for California, and if you can, donate, well, support everything that's happening there. It's really, really sad. I think they're projecting a couple hundred deaths and thousands of people who are still missing. So my heart goes out to them, especially during this time. Lastly, I attended the today. I think throughout the whole month of November and a little bit into December, we'll be recognizing character counts. Gaithersburg is a character count city, and so the Education Enrichment Committee is hosting different assemblies around the city at different elementary schools, and I attended Rachel Carlson Elementary School. Thank you to Principal Hammond for having us, and we got to sing along with kindergarten students through third grade. Jim led us in songs about each of the 6 pillars of character. So just remember, if you're living in Gaithersburg or passing through, be mindful of our 6 character traits and be sure to model them. And I will, it is a year, it's been 1 year, my 1-year anniversary passed last week when I became elected. So I'm very thankful to be in this position. I'm thankful to the residents for electing me to be here, and I look forward to another great year ahead and want to wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Maria. I want to thank all our council members for their comments. I agree and echo all of them, and that saves us a lot of time because they already said everything. Just want to mention a couple other things. A couple weeks ago, I did deliver the city testimony before the Board of Education on their capital improvements program, stressing needs and overcrowding issues that need to be remedied in the city of Gaithersburg, as we've done for the past 15, 20 years. This is an annual thing where we go and advocate for our school communities. And I did also want to note that on November 11th, we had our Veterans Day observance, and it was terrific as usual. I want to thank all the staff that was involved in that and in helping us, and it really is something that everybody should join us for that event. It's really, particularly when it's on a weekend, it's really wonderful. And again, happy Thanksgiving to everyone. I will go on to from the city manager.
Thanks, Mayor. Just one quick item tonight as we're continuing to work through the concept of the design of the proposed pedestrian bridge over Great Seneca Highway. One of the wild cards that we have not really engaged State Highway over the years, and they did formally write to us and express support for the bridge, and even offered assistance in getting it through the permitting process and even potential funding. We understood that the amount that we had gotten from MedImmune through the annexation process was probably going to be sufficient, but now the bridge has grown in scale, and obviously the design is something that needs a little bit of tweaking.
We can make it even better.
We can make it even better. So it was good to hear, and I wanted to call out Mike Johnson and his shop for working with SHA, especially GK Taruni, for working with them and getting them to go on the record.
Thank you. One more thing before we move on to economic development. I forgot to mention next week we do have a work session, Monday, November 26th. We're going to receive annual briefings from 3 of our committees, Senior Advisory Committee, Transportation Committee, and the Environmental Affairs Committees. And for more information on our upcoming agenda, visit our website at gaithersburgmd.gov. Now for our economic development update, Mr. Tom Lonergan.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. 2 quick items. Just prior to my vacation, Sharon and I were spending some time with Keisha Houghton and members of the MWBC, if you're not familiar with them, the Maryland Women's Business Center, down in Rockville to discuss ways that we could better partner with each other and better serve the city's small business community. MWBC is a nonprofit founded about 8 years ago to support entrepreneurs with workshops, special resources, and access to capital. The focus has historically been on women entrepreneurs, but they certainly don't shy away from helping male entrepreneurs either. And while they exist to assist entrepreneurs countywide, most of their programming and focus to date has been Rockville and Point South. We're working with them to have that programming happening more here in the city. We're working with them to potentially bring some of that to launch workplaces with the city as a partner in doing so. We've begun to discuss some ideas for workshops and classes that could be of interest and import to small business owners here in Gaithersburg, including state certification as minority business enterprises, small business reserve certification, hub zones, and SBA loan programs. We're open to other ideas. We're just getting this off the ground, so if anybody has any further ideas or things they'd like to see programmed, let us know. Secondly, and finally, just a reminder that this Saturday, the 24th, is Small Business Saturday. Started in 2010 by American Express. This was started to serve and support and promote small business here in Gaithersburg and nationwide. I could bore you all night with stats about small business. I'll just say they're an incredibly important part of the American economy, over 30 million of them nationally. Most of our businesses here in the city, thousands of them, have fewer than 50 employees. We talk all the time about the MedImmune scope businesses, but so many of them are very small. Small Business Saturday started. Since then, U.S. customers have reported spending $85 billion at independent retailers and restaurants. That's $85 billion on just 8 Saturdays alone. So it's important. It's not too late for small businesses here in the city to get involved for the day. American Express's website does have a lot of information and free customizable marketing materials and ideas on how to promote your business, so go to amex.com. There's lots of cool stuff on there. And I also want to mention that our state comptroller, Peter Francho, will be here in Old Town at 11 o'clock Saturday morning to celebrate the day. That's
at Victor Litz.
Victor Litz, that's
yeah.
right. 11 o'clock Saturday here in East Diamond, so come on by if you can.
It's nice that these are things that don't just happen only in my dreams. Right? To quote Debbie Gibson, right?
No.
Oh my God.
Then you have to explain it.
That's an inside joke for folks paying attention. Don't worry about it.
Anybody who follows Tom Lonergan on social media knows what Brian's talking about.
Leave it there.
Okay. Okay.
Tom, I want
Go ahead, Lorianne.
Have you heard anything from restaurants that are concerned about the plastic straw ban that's being considered at the county level?
Not yet.
Okay.
We certainly, when this was done several years ago about plastic containers, we surveyed to find out their concerns about that, and it is something we could probably and likely should do soon to get feelings on it.
Ahead, okay.
Yeah.
But we haven't heard anything yet.
What was interesting at that time is many of them thought that the polystyrene ban already applied to them, even
Yeah.
though it was separate in the city.
Something out of,
But anyway.
Yeah, we can survey.
Thank you.
So Tom, speaking of Small Business Saturday, have you lobbied Amazon yet to get a satellite office here in Gaithersburg?
Have to have less than 50 employees? What's the rule there?
Yeah, right. It would be tough for Amazon on Small Business Saturday, almost every other day.
Whatever piece of that pie you can get for us.
Got your message. Thank you.
It's ironic because most of the small businesses complain about Amazon incessantly. But
They do.
anyway, yes, I agree. We want Amazon, but let's not make it part of Small Business Saturday. Let's just make that separate.
Deal. Thank you.
Go to a brick and mortar
Nice
retail
can.
establishment on Saturday and spend your money there.
There you have it. Okay, we're going to move on to policy discussions. And the first is 700 Quince Orchard Road, and we have Jasmine Forbes up here. And this I'm anticipating will be a lot quicker of a discussion than it might have been, because the applicant is asking us not to vote on this tonight, but rather to reopen the record because they want to come to us with some changes. Jasmine, I'll let you explain.
Yes, thank you. So Schematic Development Plan Application SDP-7927-2018 was originally scheduled this evening for a policy discussion. The applicant had proposed to construct a 2-level garage deck and construction of 2 new public roads. But on November 14th, the applicant has submitted a letter requesting the council to defer the final action on the application and reopen their records. This request is allowing the applicant to modify their plans to include an initial phase for this project, which will contain a surface parking lot. So pursuant to section 24-198C2II of the City Code, the SDP can be amended at any time after the Planning Commission's review and prior to council's action. So staff is requesting this evening that the Mayor City Council reopen their record for SDP-7927-2018 until 5 p.m. January 4th, 2019, with anticipated policy discussion on January 22nd of 2019, and staff will be requesting the Planning Commission to reopen their record during their regular meeting tomorrow evening on Tuesday, November 20th, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Just one question just one question to start off, I should say. When an amended plan comes in, will we receive a memo from staff explaining the changes and any staff recommendations coming out of that?
So it'll go back to Plan Commission for recommendation, and we'll provide a memo of the findings at that meeting.
Great.
And come back for final policy discussion.
Great. Any other questions or comments on this?
I'll make the motion to reopen the record.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries 5-0. The record is reopened. Next, 913 and 917 Quince Orchard Road.
Thank you. So this is the Mayor City Council policy discussion for Schematic Development Plan Application SDP-7362-2016. If you see in the aerial, the subject properties are 913 and 917 Quince Orchard Road, which is located at the corner of Great Seneca Highway and Quince Orchard Road, highlighted in red. Both properties are zoned MXD. The applicant proposed to construct a 365-unit apartment building, a 7-level parking garage, and 5,800 square feet of assembly space. The new apartment building is proposed to be constructed in 2 phases. The first phase will contain 271 units, and the second phase contains 94 units. The second phase of this development will not commence construction until the adjacent Saul property receives schematic development plan approval, which will lay out the street network, which is necessary for vehicle and pedestrian connections. The applicant is also requesting approval for road code waiver RC-7952-18. to modify the pavement widths for Arch and Granite Place. To refresh the council, the joint public hearing for this application was held on February 6, 2017. The application initially proposed a apartment building with 295 dwelling units. And during the course of that meeting, there were discussions about generation rates, the traffic generated from this new development, vehicle and pedestrian connection, and the new entrance along Great Seneca Highway. And based off of those comments and to allow the applicant time to address those comments, the Mayor City Council and the Planning Commission records were held open indefinitely. So there were 3 work sessions held on March 27th, 2017, July 10th, 2017, and January 22nd of 2018. And during the work session on January 22nd, which was the last work section, the plans were revised to include 2 phases. And then during that work session, there were some outstanding concerns that need to be addressed, such as the entrance on Great Seneca Highway, and the applicant to work with the Colonnade Community Association to address any concerns that they may have on this development. So the Planning Commission closed their record on October 10th at 5 p.m. and made a recommendation of approval on October 17th. And the Planning Commission had recommended approval for the SDB application with 1 condition and the associated road code waiver. And following the Planning Commission's recommendation, staff had decided to add an additional condition to address the phase 2 of the development. So we've added a second addition in your draft resolution. The council's record closed at 5 p.m. on October 26. There's a total of 183 exhibits in the record. I know at the when we came back to reopen the record, there was a request to include all the exhibits since the initial application to be submitted in the packet, but due to technical and capabilities of our system, we were only able to include exhibits 121 to 183 in your packet, but all the exhibits for this project are available on the city's project page. So I'm going to kind of go briefly little detail on what has been done since the last work session. So at the last work session, January 22nd, the applicant had submitted revised plans, which is exhibit 149 and 150 of your packet. And with those revised plans, what the applicant did was split the project into 2 phases. So this is going to be phase 1, which includes the 6-story apartment building with the 295 units and the 6-level parking garage. And this is phase 2, which they propose to build an 8-story apartment building with 94 units. There was a question on why phase 2 was 8 stories high. The reason was because the apartment building is adjacent to the Saul property, and there's currently an approved sketch plan for the Saul property, and adjacent to the Killen's Apartments, the Saul's property is approved to have up to 12 stories in height. So Saul had concerns that when they do come back for schematic plan, and then when they do develop, that their views will be behind a parking garage. So the apartment building was there to kind of screen the parking garage view when they come in. What also was done was the applicant has set the building back from the colony side a couple of feet and proposed to do these walk-up townhouse units on the first 2 levels, and to also help with the massing of the building, which was one of the concerns. The applicant on the colony side had done this step back movement on the building to create more of a less bulky feel to the building. One of the concerns that the Mayor City Council wanted the applicant to do was to reach out to the Colony Community Association to work out any concerns they had, and the applicant has met with the Colony Association, and a signed memorandum of understanding was submitted, and that is exhibit 158 of your record. And as part of that agreement, Colonnade Community Association is required to submit an approval letter, which is exhibit 116 in your record. Also, another concern they had, council had, was the potential of any vehicle conflict between the vehicles coming down Quince Orchard Road, Great Seneca Highway, and coming out of the new development. So the applicant has provided a vehicle weaving analysis showing what the traffic volumes and any vehicle potential conflicts for before, and they done it before after. It was shown that the applicant, since the new entrance is moved further south of the property, that there's more space for vehicles to maneuver on Great Seneca Highway. The applicant had also met with SHA to go any other alternatives that can be done to help with any other vehicle traffic on that road, and they proposed 3 alternatives, and SHA had no problems with those alternatives, so they felt like that the entrance on Great Seneca Highway was the best option. But they will, once further down the road, when more detailed drawings are submitted, they'll look into any additional traffic calming would need to be done. Let's see. So also during, so the applicant submitted a road code waiver request, which was not viewed during the work session. So what the applicant's requesting is a road code waiver for the reduced pavement widths, just to meet, for this new road, private road, to meet the existing conditions of Arch Place that goes through the colonnade. So in conclusion, staff is supportive of schematic development plan. Staff's opinion that the applicant has adequately addressed the comments that was raised by the City Council and the Planning Commission. And staff feels that the plans further meets the visions and goals in the city master and strategic plan by providing moderately priced dwelling units, which provide a variety of diversified incomes in the city. This development will provide more dwelling units to meet a projected population in the city. And staff feels that, you know, the applicant has provided a unique type of living facility, especially with that ground floor walk-ups. And we do want to note that this application is the first step in the application process. The plans will be further evaluated more in detail at final site plan stage. So staff resolutions for SDP-7362-16 and road code waiver RC-7952-18 has been included and are ready by separate motions for final action should the council so choose. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have this evening.
Thank you, Jasmine. I have a feeling everyone's going to have a piece to say about this. And I'll just start sort of generically, since I don't have a vote on it. I will note that, you know, like this project or not, it is, the process has gone, we've had a long process on this. It's been thoroughly evaluated. There have been a number of hoops for the applicant to jump through with SHA, with working with the Colonnade, working with Saul, and that certainly deserves to be acknowledged, like or dislike the plan. I'm going to start with Councilmember Spiegel on this.
Throw me right into the frying pan, Mr. Mayor. Thanks. Well, folks, it's a tough call anytime we have a large project like this proposed for an existing neighborhood. And we have to carefully weigh the cost-benefit analysis. And not 100% of the people are going to like either side of this. But for me, at the end of the day, the pros outweigh the cons of this project for a variety of reasons. And I'll just go through some of the key points that made the difference for me. First of all, this project offers the promise of up to 55 affordable housing units on the west side of the city, which is a really significant contribution to our affordable housing stock in an area that needs more of it. So to me, that is a big piece of the equation here. As has already been mentioned, the Colonnade Condo Association Board of Directors and Saul, the two large adjacent property owners, have signed off on this project. I'm sure they're not happy with 100% of the details of the project either, but they've signed off on it, and to me, that's pretty telling. I agree that the applicant has made a number of design changes and other accommodations to address a variety of issues over the course of this long public process, including the massing of the building to address concerns from the colonnade with that tiered structure on the southwest side, to address the traffic flow. And just for clarification from folks who've been asking, yes, the Great Seneca Highway entranceway will be a requirement of this project, and it's already been approved by the State Highway Administration. The activated frontage with those interesting products on the first floor exterior of the building, the commitment to four-sided architecture, which isn't cheap for developers to do, but we find that to be an important thing in the city of Gaithersburg to address the quality of products and what they look like and the aesthetics and how they fit into the surrounding community. So a number of these issues they have addressed. We had some extensive discussions over the course of the process over green space. There will be some nice green space added as part of this project. The project accommodates future pathway of an eventual Corridor Cities Transitway if that transit project is ever actually built. The project will be phased to help us address the absorption of all these new units. There has been a substantial effort to look at that new entryway off of Great Seneca Highway and try and figure out ways to optimize the safety at that access point. And in fact, the Planning Commission made that issue a condition of final approval. So given all of this, despite some concerns about some of the details, I think at the end of the day, the benefits outweigh the costs, at least for me. We talked about the fact that there's still, even after this SDP process, if the plan is approved tonight, that there's still a final site plan process with the Planning Commission where they will have the opportunity to really weigh in on the truly fine details and architecture of the exterior and the rest of the project. And it's my sincere hope that the Planning Commission will take great care at final site plan, and staff will work with them at final site plan along with the applicant to really try to ensure architectural compatibility with the surrounding area, including integrating that southwest facade with the colonnade project. That's not to say the building needs to look exactly like the colonnade. It's a new and different building. It won't look exactly like it, but to the best of their ability to really try to integrate the details of the architecture with the surroundings is something I would strongly encourage staff and Planning Commission to do. But with all of that, and for all of those reasons, I'm going to vote to approve this SDP tonight. So that's where I stand.
Thank you, Ryan. We'll move on to Mike.
Those are a lot of good reasons. Staff, I want to compliment staff and the applicant for working together so well to address all of the issues that we've had. But for me, I think the main issue has been from the beginning and remains the right in, right out on Great Seneca. I don't have great faith in the analysis by the State Highway Department, and I still think it's kind of vague when it says applicant to work with staff to explore possible ways to enhance the vehicle safety. So I think the best way to enhance vehicle safety is to not have that right in, right out at that location. There's another 300 feet or so, 500 feet, I don't remember, that goes onto Main Street. So there are a number of other reasons that I could come up with why I have problems with this plan, but like I said, I think that it made a case for how this fits into the city's master plan, how it fits into the Kentland's master plan, and I think that the applicant has worked diligently to address all of these concerns. That being said, I think my safety concern about that right in, right out is outweighs everything else here. So I will vote no on this.
Okay. Thank you. Rob.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me begin by saying I appreciate all of the effort that the applicant has put into engaging the community here. and modifying its plans, both at our direction or our requests and the Planning Commission's requests, as well as seeking substantial community input throughout the way. So certainly I don't want that to be lost here with respect to the engagement. You know, I'm on the fence with respect to this project. You know, on the one hand, the land use for this property is such that there was going to be something there, whether it was originally an office building or now residential use. So there was to be development planned on this site. And I didn't really have an issue, and in fact we voted for the amendment to the land use on this area to permit residential. I do have an issue, I think, with respect to the size of the project. You know, going back to I guess it was maybe the second iteration where they broke it out into 2 phases, and it went from 270-something units to what I thought when we were providing comment would be a 2-phased approach with about the same units, but in fact it grew by about 100 to put high 300s on the property. So I do have my concern that it is perhaps too much for the property, which weighs into my consideration as to whether or not the property is in fact compatible with the adjoining uses. I do, and I've expressed my concern along with Mike regarding the safety of the traffic ingress egress into the and out of the development. I do note, and I commend the applicant for reaching agreement with the adjoining property owners who had a private street that would be maintained by them but would be used as a public right-of-way. And I do commend the applicant for coming to an agreement with the HOA and addressing that, ultimately, that issue. I'm going to use the opportunity here to get back on my soapbox about the APFO, if my colleagues will allow me to do so, because that really is one of my overarching concerns, and with respect to the impact it'll have on one particular school, Rachel Carson Elementary School, which is one of the most crowded elementary schools in the area. And so, you know, I got on my soapbox before about the APFO and how I think it's faulty, and I don't think it adequately predicts realities here. One, it's based on the approved capacities for the area, so it doesn't even consider the added generations for this property itself, which I guess would be 17 for phase 1 and 27 overall for phase 2. You know, the other issue that I've got is that the certification that the city manager made in July of this year was based on the FY18 generation rates predicted by the superintendent. And so that projection was 973 students for Rachel Carson for a capacity of 691. However, in the FY19 for the same year, they upped the projection. So it's now 1,011 students for the same year, but in the subsequent CIP. So the county itself is predicting more students in this area versus what was in the past CIP, which is the numbers that we're actually going to be considering. Plus that 1,011 doesn't consider the 27 individuals that will be generated by this project, which if they were considered would put it above 150%, which would place the project in a moratorium. And then in addition to that, we have other projects coming up this year, possibly, that would be using the same FY18 generation rates that wouldn't consider, one, the addition of students from the FY18 or the CIP 18, the year 18 CIP by the superintendent of the year 19 CIP, plus they wouldn't be considering the generation rates by this project for any subsequent project approvals. Now, having said all that, I've consulted with Council Lynn Board at depth about this specific issue, this conundrum, this thing that troubles me, and because the APFO is written as it is, I can't legally consider that, am I correct, Lynn, in my decision as to whether or not to approve this project or not?
Correct.
Okay, so I would just, it pains me. It pains me because I think the APFO is faulty, and I beseech my colleagues here to take another look at the APFO. I'm in fact working with planning and code right now to figure out what alternatives we have, looking at different models around the area, including the county, and how they come up with their generation rates, because the generation rates that we're predicting our projects on are not reality, and we need to have an APFO that predicts according to reality so that we don't have projects that are getting ahead of projected capacity that could change and that we know will change. So we could be approving projects that ultimately will not have the adequate public facilities because our formulas don't add up with reality. So, long-winded, I appreciate the indulgence of my colleagues with respect to that. That's it.
Okay. Are you how would you
So where are you?
on this project?
You're on a razor's edge.
Razor's edge, yes, thank you. Okay, so
Gonna wait till the end?
no, I won't leave everyone in suspense here. So, again, on a micro level, I have issues with the project, and we've expressed those issues, and I think those issues, I hope those issues can get resolved as we move forward. My overarching concern is something that I cannot legally consider, and so I will not consider that. And so it is tough, it is tight, but I'll be voting in favor of the project.
Okay. Lorianne.
Okay. Well, so did the capacity change? Is it still 365 units?
Yeah, so it's 365, phase one.
271
271.
and 94.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm looking at, I know that there were initial concerns about, space and capacity at Rachel Carson. And I took a look at the recently released CIP report, and September of 22 is the anticipated completion date of the addition at DeFeef Elementary School. And so even looking at the projections 6 years out, there's going to be capacity as long as these plans are held in place. I think Ryan mentioned it before, affordable housing is, needed on the west side of Gaithersburg. It's not a perfect project, but I'm looking forward to seeing later plans to see how this will look and if there are any concerns with visibility from the neighboring colonnades. With regards to the traffic study, where I guess I saw that there were some concerns about emergency vehicles and being able to accommodate that. Would those emergency vehicles be going through the front entrance, the roundabout, or can they still go through Arch Place?
Maybe. I know with this revised plan, I should have submitted
Is there a particular
so
map
yeah, so
that's
they
good
did
for us?
submit
That's addressed.
I think there's
Is it
enough.
in
for
what page?
for fire, but the road code waiver was reviewed by the fire marshal and is approved. So they believe it's gonna be tight, but there is adequate vehicle turning for a fire truck.
To go through Arch Place or to come from?
They're just showing it going through their property, or through, around the apartments. Yeah.
Okay. A fire truck?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So this is, so the dark path here in this diagram shows
So they show it coming off through.
Oh, okay, so that's from Arch Place, okay, that's from the colonnades, okay. And was an agreement made for the power washing after the, okay.
Yeah, that was in the memorandum of understanding, that after construction is done, that the applicant will power wash any of the buildings that might have contained dust during construction.
All right, so I will support this project and look forward to seeing later more specific details of the development.
Thank you, Lorianne. Neil?
So, I think counting the votes, I think the votes are there to support the project. I'm not going to support it, I guess it's symbolic at this point, but throughout this multi-year long process, I guess at least a year and a half or more, I think some concerns have been expressed, some have been dealt with, some haven't. I think I'm concerned over the amount of, so let me start by this way. I think we need more density of housing in the area, and there's more coming, and that part is okay. I think the amount of density for this footprint strikes me as being, and has always struck me as being too intense, too large of a building. I've noted that in the record, the most vehement issues with this come from people who live the closest, particularly in the colonnade development. There is, over time, there has been some support developing in the community as well, but generally from people that are a little farther removed. And I'm trying to be sensitive to the fact that it has a greater impact on the people who are literally right next door. The fact that the number of units has increased over time is something that has been a surprise throughout this process. The fact that it's going to be the only building of its kind without ground floor retail, although I understand the reasons for it, is just still, it just seems like it'll be a less activated space than the remainder of the retail area. So the meeting's going on for a long time, and I think the conclusion is clear, so I'll leave it at that at this point. I think that my concern is that that while progress has been made, not sufficient progress has been made to get this to the point where I'm comfortable with it.
Okay.
So Mr. Mayor, can I change my tentative vote just so Neil talks a little bit more? I'm just kidding.
Wow.
A little levity for a very serious topic.
Okay, so
you almost had a heart attack. You should see the guys in the back of the room.
Lynn, my understanding is we need two separate motions.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So we need a motion on SDP 7362 2016 first.
Mr. Mayor, I will move approval of the resolution to approve SDP 7362 2016.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Okay, that carries 3-2, with the nays being Councilmembers Sesma and Harris.
Oh, by the way, I know I should have clarified this before we voted, but Lynn, that automatically includes the two conditions that were in the draft?
Yes.
Okay.
Because they're included in the resolution. Yes.
Right, correct. Okay.
Okay, and then we have the road code waiver request, RC 7952-2018.
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay.
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 Okay, it carries same way, 3-2. Council members Sesma and Harris in dissent. Okay, thank you very much, Jasmine.
Thank you.
Let's see where we are on this agenda. Okay, next we have our ordinance to amend Gaithersburg Arts and Monuments Funding Corporation.
So moved.
Second.
I mean, there was no discussion on it last time.
Please introduce.
Are you going to argue?
Why don't you, let's let staff introduce.
Do the introduction first and then we'll vote. Thank you, Rob. We'll get there.
Not that I don't appreciate all the work you put into this, but.
So good evening. We have before you tonight policy discussion and final action on the proposed ordinance to amend Chapter 6B of the City Code entitled Gaithersburg Arts and Monuments Incorporation, or GAMPIC. GAMPIC is a nonprofit organization formed under this authority of Chapter 6B, and they are to provide funding support for arts and revitalization in Gaithersburg. It received its tax-exempt status from the IRS in 2006. The purpose of this ordinance is to expand the organization's scope so that it, in addition to supporting the arts and revitalization, it can also work to support parks and recreation programs, projects, facilities, and initiatives. To reflect this scope, this expanded scope, the ordinance will also amend the name of the organization to Gaithersburg Parks, Arts, and Recreation Corporation, or GPark. Additionally, the qualifications for the mayor and council appointed board members will include members that represent not only the arts, as they do now, but also parks and recreation. In a public hearing held at your meeting on October 1st, 2018, a city resident and a president of the Money Branch Alliance both attended and expressed their interest in participating in this effort, and a member of the Cultural Arts Advisory Committee provided comments in support of this as well. The record was held open until October 12th, 2018, and the record does not include any public comments, as none were submitted. So we're happy to answer any of your questions and respectfully request that you vote to approve this.
Thank you, Denise. Rob, you want to?
Do I need to mention that at all, or is that something that can just be corrected later?
That's something we correct, yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Okay.
Oh, so moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carries 5-0. Next, that was, you guys did really well.
I have one question, though.
I'll keep.
Okay, on page 801, current fundraising efforts. It seems like the book festival is always at the top of the list. I just wonder how this list got constructed. That's all.
It's random.
It's kind of a rhetorical question. So
He's
Well,
being a
that
smart aleck.
actually, the book festival has raised more money than any of the others.
Just saying. All right.
Benefit
you answered a
now?
question that I did not ask. Okay, that's fine.
Costs outweigh the
No.
revenue?
No.
Okay.
And for those in,
But
in
we're
this-
on the way to that.
For those in the TV audience, he wasn't kidding about this being on page 801. There are 895 pages in our
Yes.
meeting packet tonight, and that's not counting all the pages they didn't have room to include because of technical issues.
So do great things, Gaithersburg. Just not that
long?
big.
No, we're not done yet.
What's going on?
We just voted. Easy. It's only 9:35, all right?
That's right, you're doing great.
Doing great.
It's warm in here.
Oh, there's another item.
Yes, there's another item.
One last question about the accounting and reporting. Is that at each meeting for the committee, or?
The board of directors meeting of the organization.
Okay.
The treasurer's report is
Yeah.
at every meeting, and annual reports are provided to the city.
Okay, all right. During the PowerPoint presentation of?
That, and also just turned in, and we have various reporting.
Okay, all right. Sounds good.
Should we
Thank
vote
you,
again?
ladies.
No, we're good. We're good. So now we're talking about amendments to the articles of incorporation and bylaws.
Yes.
Denise, take it away.
So thank you for approving the ordinance. This resolution approves the amendments to the supporting documents of the organization, its articles of incorporation and bylaws. The amendments are basically to make sure that these documents reflect the goals set forth in the amendment, the ordinance amendment in Chapter 6B. A few other aspects of the documents have been amended, including a requirement that an annual budget be provided to the city manager. The other reporting vehicles are still in effect. That would be the organization's annual finance report to the city's finance director, and a summary of the goals and of the organizations included in the city's strategic plan and quarterly updates to that plan. Also were little tweaks to the board terms, or the years of their terms, and the number of members are more clearly defined. So we're happy to answer any other questions and respectfully request that you approve this resolution.
I think you've done a good job. It's cleaned it up pretty well and got all the right words in the right places, and I want to compliment you on the acronym that you came up with. GPark makes, just rolls off the tongue. So much better than GAMFIC.
Yeah.
Than GAMFIC. So I will move the resolution.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carries 5-0. Thank you all very much, and thank you for your patience in waiting to this time to come to the podium.
Good work.
Anything from any other staff? Not seeing anything? Okay. As mentioned earlier, we have join us for our work session, next work session, next Monday, November 26th, where we will receive briefings from Senior Advisory Committee, Transportation Committee, and the Environmental Affairs Committee. We have our leashes and lights. Bring your dog to take a nice walk under the lights tomorrow evening. Tickets are on sale. You can find them at the city website. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Let's do great things, Gaithersburg. We are adjourned.